We met at an immigration seminar. Of all places to fall in love, huh? Room full of tired faces, desperate smiles, and dreams stapled to application forms. She sat 2 rows ahead, radiant in a sea of half-dead eyes. I remember the moment like it was folded into my passport. She turned around to borrow a pen. I gave her mine and threw in a stupid smile that said, "Take the whole country while you're at it." Her name was Alina, Russian by blood, international by ambition. She had that blend of mystery and mischief you find in Bond girls and bar fights. I was working in tech, good pay, good benefits, bad sleep. She was working at a bakery that somehow had her smelling like cinnamon and superiority. It wasn't long before we were knee-deep in immigration paperwork and fantasies of shared furniture and shared citizenship. We weren't just dating. We were planning. Color-coded folders. Scheduled interviews. She started learning about American football just to fit in. I started learning Russian just to impress her mother. Even though the woman looked at me like I was a stray cat she couldn't legally euthanize. We talked about cities. She wanted Los Angeles for the sun and the actors. I wanted Boston for the sarcasm and the seafood. We compromised on New York. Seemed fitting. The Statue of Liberty and all that symbolism. We were a team, man. One of those ride-or-die pairs. Or so I thought. I booked our flights for June 12th. One way. We were leaving behind family, countries, and my incredibly affordable apartment with a leak that looked like Iceland on the ceiling. We'd even packed up the dog. Hers, not mine. A French bulldog named Gatsby. Pretentious and wheezy, like a rich man with asthma. Immigration paperwork? Approved. Interviews? Passed. Suitcases? Packed. Hearts? Full. And then came June 10th. The moment that slashed through my expectations like custom scissors on a suspicious parcel. June 10th. 2 days before D-Day. Or in my case, D for Dumpster Fire Day. We were sitting at our favorite little cafe, a place called Milo's, that had terrible service and god-tier croissants. I thought we were having a last hurrah before stepping into our new life together. I even wore the shirt she liked, the one with the sleeves rolled up just right, making me look like I had deltoids instead of office chair shoulders. She was quiet, not unusual for her. Alina had a way of making silence feel meaningful. But that day it was vacant, like someone had gutted the warmth and left the shell sitting across from me, sipping a lukewarm chai. "You okay?" I asked. She looked at me like I'd asked if gravity still worked. Then she gave me this little, almost imperceptible nod and said, "I have to tell you something." Now, a normal person hears that and assumes one of 3 things. 1. She crashed the car. 2. She's pregnant. Or 3. Someone's dead. Me? I thought. Did I forget her birthday again? She stared out the window like she needed permission from the clouds. "I'm not flying alone," she said. Just like that. Flat. Final. At first, I thought she meant she wanted to bring her mom or the dog in a carry-on. I gave a confused chuckle and said, "Okay, who's coming with us?" Then she added, "I'm sorry." That's when the air thinned. That's when the sentence hit like turbulence in a clear sky. It wasn't her mom. Or her sister. Or the dog. No, the mystery passenger was some guy named Dennis. A co-worker. A friend. One of those guys who always had a little too much interest in her Instagram stories. Apparently, he was flying with her. To America. My America. Our America. Now their America. "I didn't plan for this," she said. Lies. Lies always come with a disclaimer. "I didn't plan for this" means I planned it just enough to avoid guilt, but not enough to avoid consequences. She looked down at the table. I looked at the last croissant on the plate and felt a wild urge to smash it like my own heart. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I stood up, paid the bill, didn't say a word. Because when someone shows you who they are, especially at 36, with decent hair and a full set of working values, you don't ask them to explain it. You let them rot in their own choices. And you board the flight alone. The cab ride to the airport was quiet, but not sad. More like the silence after a fire has burned the house down and all you can do is stare at the ashes and think, huh, so that's what the insurance commercials were talking about. Alina didn't call. She didn't text. I imagine she was too busy figuring out how to fit betrayal into an overhead compartment. Probably on the phone with Dennis, practicing how they'd tell the customs agent they weren't together, just travel buddies who packed light and ruined lives. Me? I walked through that terminal like I belonged there. Passport in one hand, dignity in the other. No tears. No drama. Just a man with a one-way ticket and a suitcase full of clothes, dreams, and silence. You ever fly with a broken heart? It's wild. Every announcement sounds like a eulogy. Every crying baby sounds like your inner child throwing a tantrum. I sat in that cramped middle seat between two snorers, watching a rom-com on the seatback screen and thinking, I used to believe in plot twists too. I landed in New York on June 12th, jet-lagged, betrayed, and wildly underwhelmed by the bagel situation. But here's the twist no one sees coming. I didn't crash. I climbed. I got a job 2 weeks later with a tech startup. Small team. Big ideas. I didn't say much about my past. Just that I came here to start over, which, if you say it with the right smile, sounds brave instead of tragic. In 6 months, I was head of product. In a year, I had my own place in Brooklyn, complete with a coffee machine I didn't know how to use and a view of a city that owed me nothing, but gave me everything. I learned how to cook for one, how to sleep without needing the weight of another body beside me. I even picked up the guitar again. Apparently, heartbreak pairs well with F minor. And then, 2 years later, like a moth drawn to the last light bulb she hadn't burned, she reached out. Instagram message. Classic. Because nothing says, I ruined our future, like sliding into DMs with, hey, can we talk? She wanted help. Said Dennis bailed on her. Immigration stuff fell apart. Life was hard. She didn't recognize the woman she'd become. And then, my favorite part. I think I was happier when we were planning our life together. I read it 3 times. Not because I needed to understand it. I just wanted to savor it. And I replied with 1 sentence. I became myself without you. She left me on read. Fitting, really. That's all she ever did, read me, but never really saw me. Want to see what happened when she tried showing up in person. She showed up in person 2 weeks after the message. I wish I could say I was surprised, but honestly, Alina always had a flair for the dramatic. She didn't just burn bridges, she lit them up like runway lights, then acted shocked when the plane crashed. It was a Saturday, early spring. New York was pretending it was warm again, even though the wind was out there biting faces like it held a grudge. I was in the middle of a rare day off, sipping overpriced coffee from a mug that said world's okayest ex, when my building's intercom buzzed. Who is it? A pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in 2 years. Still soft. Still sly. It's me. She didn't even have to say her name. I stared at the button, thought about ignoring it, thought about walking away. But curiosity, that old traitor, tugged at me. So I buzzed her in. She stepped into the apartment like she used to own it, except she never had. And this place, was mine. All mine. Every crooked picture frame, every mismatched fork, every cracked tile in the kitchen. Earned. Lived in. Survived in. Alina looked weathered. Still beautiful, sure, but thinner. Paler. Like life had gotten tired of waiting for her to grow up and just started teaching her lessons the hard way. She stood just inside the doorway, arms crossed, like she wasn't sure if this was a meeting or a trial. Maybe both. Nice place, she said. Voice tentative. I scanning the space like she was looking for a ghost. Spoiler alert, she was the ghost. I didn't offer her coffee. Didn't ask if she wanted to sit. Why are you here? She flinched a little. Not physically, but emotionally, like the question came sharper than she'd expected. I needed to see you. In person. To explain. I gave her a look that said I don't believe in fairy tales anymore, and leaned against the counter. Explain what, exactly? How you took a joint dream and used it as a boarding pass for someone else. She winced. Good. She was here for honesty, after all. I made a mistake. I scoffed. Not even subtle about it. A mistake is dropping your phone in the toilet. You made a decision. A deliberate one. At the gate. With tickets in hand. She stepped further in, clutching her coat like armor. Dennis promised everything. He said we'd have it easier if we came as a couple. He handled everything. Said I'd never have to worry. I raised an eyebrow. You picked the guy with easy answers. Got it. She took a shaky breath, like she wasn't used to people cutting through her rehearsed monologues. He left. 4 months after we landed. Took the money, left the apartment, ghosted me. Immigration tried to revoke my status. I'd been couch surfing, working jobs under the table. I messed up. Oh, now she saw it? And what? You thought I'd be here, in the same spot you left me, holding the door open just in case you came crawling back. She didn't answer. Because yes, that's exactly what she thought. That's what people like her do. They mistake kindness for weakness and think closure is something they're owed. I didn't come to beg, she said, finally. I came because I wanted you to know. I remember. I remember the version of me who loved you. The one who sat with you on the floor filling out immigration forms, dreaming about dog parks and tiny apartments and a stupid IKEA couch that took 5 hours to assemble. That part almost got me. Almost. Because yeah, I remembered that too. I remembered her head on my shoulder at JFK while we waited in line. I remembered the way she joked about getting lost in Central Park like it was a romantic comedy waiting to happen. I remembered the feeling of knowing we were about to build something. But memories, I've learned, are just echoes. They don't pay rent. They don't clean the floors. And they sure as hell don't rebuild trust. I walked over to the window and looked out at the city, my city now. The place I survived in. The place I rebuilt me in. You didn't just leave me at the gate, Alina. You replaced me. In real time. Like I was a layover. She didn't deny it. She just stood there, small in a room that had no space left for her. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she whispered. I just didn't know where else to go. That was her real reason for coming. Not love. Not regret. Nowhere else to go. And that's when I realized she didn't miss me. She missed the man I was to her. The support. The structure. The scaffolding around her crumbling life. She missed the version of me who'd drop everything to fix what she broke. But that man? He got on that plane and became someone else. I turned back to her, steady and calm. You walked off the path we built. And I kept going. She nodded, silent tears finally starting their descent. For once, I didn't feel the need to comfort her. Because sometimes pain is a teacher, and she had skipped too many lessons already. So, you won't help? She asked, barely audible. I smiled. Cold. Not cruel, but final. Oh, I will. Just not in the way you want. Then I reached into my drawer, pulled out an envelope, and handed it to her. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a copy of the same immigration lawyer referral I'd used when I arrived. Best in the city. But taped to the front was a post-it note with one sentence. Ask for the starting from scratch rate. She looked up, eyes wide, crushed. This is how it ends? I shrugged. This isn't the end. This is what the beginning really looks like. You just never stayed long enough to see one through. And with that, I opened the door. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just enough for her to step back into the world she'd chosen. She walked out without another word. And I locked the door behind her. She was gone. The echo of her boots, expensive ones, I noticed, probably bought during the Dennis Had a Plan chapter, still hung in the hall like the smell of something burnt. Not fresh, not deadly, just stubborn. That's the thing about people like Alina. They don't vanish. They linger. I poured myself a drink. Not to celebrate. Not to mourn. Just to mark the occasion. You know, like a ribbon-cutting ceremony for emotional closure. She came back, hoping for a handout, a soft place to land, maybe even a redo. But life isn't a Word document. You don't get to hit undo because your feelings finally caught up to your actions. And yet, I couldn't let it go. Revenge? Not quite. Not the dramatic movie kind where I torch her car or send her a box of glitter with Dennis's face on it. No, what I had in mind was colder. Sharper. It wasn't about destroying her. It was about clarity. See, people like Alina, they walk through life like they're the main character in a film that never finishes rendering. Everyone else is either a prop, a plot twist, or a soft couch to cry into when their decisions implode. She needed to see what she did, not just remember it through her lens of regret and selective amnesia. So I got to work. I started by calling in a favor. My buddy Evan ran a boutique creative agency. Did branding for startups, made launch videos, narrated success stories. The kind of guy who could make an abandoned cereal box seem inspirational if you gave him 5 minutes and a drone camera. Evan, I said, I want to tell a story. He chuckled. Whose story? I smiled. Mine. He was in. We spent 3 weeks filming. My apartment. My office. The old immigration center where I first saw her. No mention of her name. No direct slander. Just my version of the events, truthful, clean, cold. A story about a man who got left behind, boarded a plane alone, and built a life anyway. A short film, really. 5 minutes long. Honest, ironic, and painful in all the right ways. We called it Terminal. I posted it online on the anniversary of our flight, the one I took solo. The reception? It exploded. Apparently, heartbreak wrapped in resilience and good lighting gets you a few million views these days. People called it powerful, poetic, a triumph of spirit. One woman DM'd me to say it made her call off her wedding. Another guy said he watched it 10 times just to remind himself not to take his ex back. It struck a nerve. And somewhere in that mix of hashtags, shares, and stitched reactions, I knew it would find her. Because people like Alina, they always circle back when the spotlight's on someone else. It took 3 days. I got a message. Saw your little film. Real classy. No greeting. No punctuation. Just passive aggression in Helvetica. She followed it up minutes later. You didn't have to make it public. And there it was, the truth she never said out loud but lived every day. Appearances mattered more than impact. She didn't care that she hurt me. She cared that people knew. So I sent one message in return. Maybe next time, don't give someone a story worth telling. Left it on that. Didn't block her. Didn't engage further. Just let her stew in the reality that the man she abandoned didn't fall apart. He built an empire out of the ruins and then narrated it like Morgan Freeman with a grudge. But here's the kicker. I never told the full story. Not in the film. Not in the interviews that followed. Because I knew the best revenge wasn't attention, it was omission. I erased her name. Her greatest fear wasn't being hated. It was being irrelevant. And I gave her exactly that. But just when I thought the chapter had closed, life handed me a sequel. See, a week later, I got an email from a woman named Maya. Said she was Dennis's ex. Not just a fling, his Alina, if you will. Turns out betrayal has a talent for recycling itself. Maya had seen the film, recognized the timeline, put 2 and 2 together. Apparently, Dennis ghosted her the same week Alina ditched me. Ah, symmetry. She said she had something I might want to see. We met for coffee. She brought receipts, literally. Hotel bookings. Flight changes. Messages that proved Alina and Dennis had planned it all months before our move. It wasn't a snap decision at the gate. It was orchestrated, timed, and rehearsed. I don't know why I kept this stuff, Maya said. Maybe for closure. Maybe for a day like this. I thanked her, paid for her coffee, and walked out with a folder of truth tucked under my arm. I didn't need it for revenge. I'd already won that round. But I did send it to one place. Immigration. Not to get her deported. I'm not that petty. But if she was still skating by on paperwork filed under false pretenses, well, I figured Uncle Sam deserved to know who he'd let in. Poetic justice, right? Not a sledgehammer. Just a scalpel. And so the wheel turned. As for me, I moved on. Literally. I left New York 6 months later for a better job in Chicago. Bigger paycheck. Nicer view. And not a single memory of her on any street corner. Alina became a story I told once. Not a ghost, not a wound, just a cautionary tale. Because here's the truth, the one people avoid. Sometimes the best revenge is making sure they can't recognize the person you became without them. And in my case, I became someone who doesn't wait at gates anymore. I fly first class, alone. I had just finished a late-night call with a client in Singapore and was halfway through a burrito the size of my emotional growth when there was a knock at the door. Now, there are only 3 reasons someone knocks at your door after 9 p.m. in Chicago. It's food you forgot you ordered. Someone's selling religion or worse, Wi-Fi plans. It's about to be a very weird night. I opened it expecting option 1, hoping it wasn't option 2, and praying it wasn't option 3. But guess what? It was none of the above. It was Maya. Not the "I'm here to drop off some more guilt receipts" version I'd met once before. No, this was a different Maya. She looked different. Less armor, more honesty. Like she'd been peeling off layers since we last met, and now stood there with nothing but facts and nerve. "Hey," she said, eyes flicking up like she hadn't rehearsed this. "I know it's late." I stepped aside and gestured for her to come in, still holding half a burrito in one hand and my confusion in the other. "Come in. But fair warning, my apartment looks like a crime scene where the victim was self-employed and behind on emails." She gave a small laugh, stepped inside, and took it all in, the books, the barely alive houseplants, the whiteboard filled with half-finished quotes I never quite committed to. "Still better than my place," she muttered, sitting down slowly. "At least your ghosts don't yell." I set the burrito down. This was not a tortilla-compatible conversation. "So," I said, "what brings you to my doorstep tonight?" I didn't know we were on surprise visit terms. She paused, tapped her fingers against her knee. "You remember that envelope I gave you? The one with Dennis and Alina's timeline." "Yeah. Well, there's more." I sat down across from her. "More betrayal? Is there a subscription plan I can cancel?" She smiled. Not because it was funny, but because sarcasm is the universal painkiller. "They used my name," she said. I blinked. "What?" "In one of their visa applications. Dennis filed paperwork using my information. It's fraud. He submitted documents that showed we were still together to extend his temporary visa. He forged my signature. Alina knew. I stared at her. Processing. Wait, are you telling me they committed immigration fraud together while blowing up both our lives? She nodded. Her jaw clenched. I didn't know until last week. I got a call from the Department of Homeland Security. They flagged a discrepancy with the address Dennis submitted. My name was on a lease for a place I've never even been to. And just like that, the plot twisted again. Turns out, betrayal isn't just a knife, it's a Swiss Army one. They'd used Maya to stay afloat, me as the springboard, and each other like life vests with holes in them. So why are you here? I asked, more curious than angry now. She looked up. Because I don't want them to get away with it. And I think you're the only person who knows exactly why they shouldn't. Fair point. I leaned back. What are you thinking? You want to report it? Go nuclear? Stage a full-blown Dateline episode? She hesitated. I want to build a case. Not just legal. Human. I want people to see the damage. The real cost of this kind of manipulation. The emotional bankruptcy. I let out a breath. You want to tell the sequel? She nodded. Exactly. Now here's the thing. I'd already made peace with the past. Or at least, I'd repainted it and moved the furniture around enough that it didn't hurt to look at anymore. But this wasn't about pain. It was about truth. And not the vague, artsy kind. The kind with documents, screenshots, records, consequences. All right, I said, after a long pause. Let's do it. And so we did. We started building the timeline. Every date, every lie, every digital footprint they left behind, thinking no one would care enough to follow. We weren't vengeful. We were meticulous. Maya contacted an attorney. I reached out to Evan again. He loved a good sequel. We called it Baggage Claim. It was raw, less poetic than Terminal, but deeper. A duet of loss. Two people piecing together the trail of a wreckage they didn't cause, but had to crawl out from under anyway. And as we worked, something strange happened. Maya and we laughed. A lot. Not because anything was funny, but because nothing bonds you like surviving the same storm someone else swears wasn't that bad. We shared stories. Not just of Dennis and Alina, but of who we were before them. Before we let people like that carve holes into our trust and call it love. She was smarter than me, I think. Or maybe just faster to heal. Either way, she helped me see that this wasn't just about them anymore. It was about us. What we rebuilt. What we refused to carry forward. Baggage Claim dropped 3 months later. Not as viral as the first, but the right people saw it. Immigration opened a case. Dennis was flagged. Alina, from what we heard, tried to scrub her tracks, but too late. You can only outrun karma if it's blind. This one had glasses. We didn't gloat. Didn't post celebratory champagne photos or clapback captions. Instead, we hosted a small screening. 10 people, 2 bottles of wine, 1 short film that reminded everyone in the room that sometimes closure looks a lot like documentation. And as the credits rolled, I turned to Maya and said, You know, I don't miss her. She raised a glass. Good. Because she never met this version of you. It came on a Wednesday. Of course it did. Wednesdays are the middle children of the week, ignored, inconvenient, and full of things that could have waited. A beige envelope. No return address. But the handwriting? Unmistakable. Alina's. Inside was a letter written in black ink, the kind of cursive that tries to look elegant but ends up just exhausted. I've seen the videos. Both of them. I know I look like the villain. Maybe I am. But I wasn't always. She wrote about Dennis leaving her. Again. He'd been deported this time, she said, though the words were sugar-coated. He had to return home. Right. I lost everything. And then I watched you become everything we wanted to be. Alone. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. That would require self-awareness. No, she was asking for something else. There's a documentary being made about immigrant stories and perseverance. A journalist saw your video and reached out. I told them I was part of it. That we were a team. I wanted to ask if you'd back me up. Just enough so I can tell my side. My jaw clenched. She still didn't get it. It wasn't that she left. It's that she used me as a springboard, then came crawling back not out of remorse, but because she was out of options again. People like her never learn. They just rebrand. I didn't reply, but I kept the letter. As a souvenir. Not of heartbreak, but of how far I'd come. 2 weeks later, the journalist Alina mentioned found me. She said she was working on a feature about immigrant resilience and had come across terminal and baggage claim. Her pitch? A sit-down interview. National spotlight. Cameras. A full arc from heartbreak to hope. I asked if Alina would be involved. She paused. That told me everything. She claims to be a significant part of your story, she finally admitted. I laughed, cold and amused. She is a part of my story, I said. Just not the part that gets applause. I declined the interview. Why? Because at some point, you stop needing the world to know what you survived. You start needing to just live. 2 years after Alina left me at the gate, I stood on a TEDx stage. Not to talk about her, or betrayal, or revenge. No, I talked about reinvention, about starting over without fanfare, about building a life from scraps no one else valued, about being your own rescue team. The crowd stood at the end. Applause thundered, and I didn't think about her once. That's when I knew she wasn't my heartbreak anymore. She was my prologue. It happened quietly. A mutual acquaintance from the old country, someone who knew us before the immigration paperwork, before the betrayal, reached out. Did you hear? She asked. Hear what? Alina had been denied citizenship. Turns out, fraud leaves a trail. Dennis's forged documents? They dragged her under too. She was flagged. Ineligible for renewal. Work permits revoked. Her future? Deported. No appeal. She'd built her life on forged promises and fake alliances, and it finally came due. And the cruelest part? I didn't do a thing. I didn't make a call. Didn't pull a string. Didn't swing a sword. I just lived well. Let her lies crumble under the weight of time and consequence. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't rage or wrath. It's relevance. It's watching the person who thought you needed them realize you became more without them than they ever dreamed of being with you. And when she messaged me one last time, a short, desperate, "Can we talk?" I didn't block her. I just replied with one sentence. You taught me to walk alone. I've been running ever since. Then I left it on read. Door closed. Plane departed. Gate never opening again.